Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. And we want to thank our friends at Epic TV for sponsoring the show. Epic TV is a censorship-free video platform with original news programs like Crossroads, The Larry Elder Show, Facts Matter, American Thought Leaders, and documentaries investigating critical issues that are not covered anywhere else. So why do we trust the Epic Times? Well, for one, I'm a contributor there now, so you can always catch me on their TV network, but also they're unbiased. They report the important news that other media ignores. They focus on clear, fact-based journalism without spin or hidden agendas. They're also truthful. They report just the facts and trust their discerning viewers, that's all of you beautiful people, to arrive at your own conclusion. They're also resilient. Despite the attacks from many sides, defamation from other media, thugs burning of their printing presses, and assaulting their journalists even, the Epic Times continue to dedicate themselves to reporting the truth. So if you're looking for an unbiased, truthful, and resilient news source, check them out today. We have a special offer just for our viewers and subscribers. Just sign up and start watching. No credit card required, no strings attached. If you decide to subscribe within 14 days, it's just $1 for 2 months. So go and watch epic.com/Jenna and subscribe. That's watch, EPOCH.com/JENNA.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and as I have promised, we are going to cover the Kari Lake versus Katie Hobbs lawsuit out of the state of Arizona. And as you are probably aware, the update on that is that a judge yesterday in Maricopa County agreed to allow the lawsuit to proceed on 2 counts, but dismissed 8 others. So we're going to get into that today with my good friend David Frei. But before that, I had promised you that Kari Lake herself would be on this show to respond and tell us her perspective on that. And so, like apparently many other conservative hosts, Kari has rescheduled multiple times, then been a little cocky and a little arrogant, in the words of Mark Levin, actually, for declining to come on today, right when my team had already spent about 30 minutes after the scheduled time waiting for her to come on. She was at a Turning Point USA event, and then her team apparently had set her up on a laptop to do this interview. It was not good enough lighting for her, and she said, that's not how I do interviews. So she said that she had to go get something to eat. She wanted to reschedule yet again. and then ultimately bailed. So for all of you, I want to be very clear. I support Kari Lake. I endorsed her for governor. I support her lawsuit. I support the issues of election integrity, but I do think that she needs an attitude readjustment. And I think that she needs to understand that even if there are a lot of demands on your time, when you commit to a show, and I have been a guest representing the sitting president of the United States, you go on barring some technical difficulty or some other, flight delay. Things happen. Absolutely. I have had tech challenges, no problem. But when you are repeatedly telling friends who are trying to cover your issues because we care and we are championing you and we are championing the conservative cause, and you make light of that because your lighting isn't perfect, well, then maybe you're just being a diva. So this is what Mark Levin had to say when Kari Lake and her team apparently canceled on him an hour before his radio program the day before the election in November. And he said it was the third time they had canceled. So this is not just me, but listen to this.
I don't know how to tell you this. We've had scheduled on this program the last several weeks 3 times Kari Lake at their request. And they've canceled 3 times, and this time 1 hour before she's supposed to appear on the radio show. So I'm guessing she's probably going to be on some Fox show, because that's what she did last time. Now, Arizona, I want you to vote for her. She's far better than the other candidate, but I just want you to know that. I would never do anything like this. And sometimes these candidates who like to be on TV, like to get their faces on TV, don't understand that talk radio has an audience that's 4 or 5 times larger than the highest rated Fox News show. And I don't say that as a put down. I'm on Fox too. These broadcast platforms, they fuse very nicely. And not only that, the email was extremely cocky. So I would tell Kari Lake, we wish you the best. I want you to win. I endorse you. But you sure have a cocky staff. And they said, but she's happy to come on after her victory. But we won't have her on after her victory. We do want her to win. I want to make it abundantly clear over and over. She is the only candidate who has done that to us. The only one. Just her. And what disappoints me tonight, the reason I'm spending time on it, that's a slot I could have given to somebody else. It's too late now. There are other candidates. That is a slot I could have given to somebody else. Now I can't. It's too late. And I want to do all I can. And you patriots out there, like no other audience in America, we're trying to do all we can to help all these candidates. Because we're on a mission. I told you this before, years and years ago, when I started in talk radio, no host did this. No syndicated host did this. We started this. This whole idea of conservative versus establishment, we pointed this out in my books and over the airwaves. Which is why Boehner hated my guts. It's okay. Feelings mutual. Meanwhile, he's a pothead, I guess, or at least he lobbies for them. And I'm not. Anyway, we're very disappointed in what just took place.
All right. So Mark Levin is obviously very upset about this, and you don't want to screw around with Mark Levin. And I think he's absolutely right that Kari Lake wouldn't do this to Tucker Carlson. She probably wouldn't do this to Hannity, Laura Ingraham, because somehow conservatives have in their mindset that the holy grail of the conservative audience resides solely within the Fox News channel. And this is why actually the Salem Podcast Network exists, and also terrestrial radio. Mark Levin is absolutely right that he and other radio syndicated hosts and even YouTubers have more views than the highest rated Fox News channel show. And even if you have a show that has a higher rating than another or a bigger audience, if you commit to a friend to go on a show, barring some other technical complication or a cross and wires, I've had people double booked before, double booked me, whatever, people understand that. But when you reschedule Mark Levin 3 times and then you blow him off to go to a Fox show, that does not look good for you. So Kari Lake, you are burning bridges. And I told her today in text message, not going to have her on the show again because now my show is late in production today because we're having to kind of, reschedule, and my producers were coming in today on their day off because this is Christmas week, right? And it's just a very rude thing to do. So I'm absolutely 100% for what Kari Lake stands for. I echo what Mark Levin said. I endorsed her. I support her. I hope she wins in her case. But I think that she needs an attitude readjustment to know that you don't do this to your friends, especially somebody like Mark Levin. I'm not even saying that my show is the best one, but you don't do that to your friends, regardless of whether it's Mark Levin, Jenna Ellis, or others that I've now heard from as well, that Kari Lake just has, maybe not the best track record. So I hope she listens to this and she readjusts that. So we're going to readjust a little bit. And I'm very excited to have my good friend David Frei come on at a moment's notice because he is actually totally awesome. Never blows me off. And he's super great. And you all know him, of course, as Viva Frei, who's on YouTube. You should absolutely listen to his show. I became a huge supporter of David when he was covering the Canadian trucker situation. He himself is Canadian, is actually looking to move to America. We're all supporting him in that endeavor, but a brilliant attorney. So David, I want to get your commentary on this case because, putting aside the personality of Kari Lake and her myopic focus on television, what she's actually doing in Arizona in fighting for election integrity, I think is great. But my concern here is that I don't know if perhaps the judge is just setting her up by giving her the ability to go to trial on, frankly, two of the weakest claims and saying that the doctrine of latches applies to the signature matching issue and kicking out 8 other claims that, frankly, were stronger. So what's your take on this?
So it's interesting. I had the same reflex, not that it's a setup to get it kicked out on whatever 2 remaining claims to go to trial, but even the framing of at least one of those 2 claims, which was the ballot on demand, where she was alleging that they were defective, that they were, they were causing delays and whatever. And the judge even dismissed a portion of that claim and limited what she is going to have to prove, that the ballot on demand machines were intentionally sabotaged, deliberately to impact the results, and that there was, in fact, an impact on the results. I mean, those are 3 conjunctions that are so strict and so restrictive in terms of what needs to be proven in order to succeed. I said, yeah, that's a one heck of a way of phrasing it. Some people are saying, just to give this the exposure that people want, you're going to have a hearing on the merits, you're going to see some of the evidence, even if it gets tossed, it's transparency at least, or a little more. Okay. But 2 of the claims go through to trial. I was just flabbergasted at the one claim that did not get to trial, which was the latches, and that has to do with signature verification, where the judge dismissed on latches, which is a derivative of French. What is it? Lâche. It's basically it's a stop. It's like you waited too long. You were lazy. You didn't act in time, on the basis that she's complaining about a warning that was given by Brnovich back in April, that there might be weaknesses, there might be room for error with the signature verification process from an April report before the midterms, and says you should have sued then, before there was an election, before there was any actual materialized damage, before there was even a claim that it might have impacted the election. And then it says you can't make the claim now, it's too late. It makes absolutely no sense, even on the reasoning of the judge alone in that judgment, where he says you have to prove that it impacted the election, but you should have sued before the votes were even cast. Otherwise, you're denied the claim based on latches. Makes no sense from the 4 corners of the judge's own decision.
Right. And I agree with you. And I agree with your characterization of judicial chicanery, which was how you described it on Twitter. And everyone should follow Viva, by the way, on Twitter. And you're verified now, which is great. And I totally agree with that, because like what we saw in 2020 with the election challenges from President Trump, it was, and even the RNC, it was either you're suing too early and there is no particularized harm, and we're kicking this out because it's not ripe enough yet. And then after the fact, they're saying, well, you should have sued before that. And so the doctrine of latches applies. So when exactly is an appropriate time to bring an election challenge? That's what we're not getting from the judiciary. And I was also very disappointed to see that signature verification and signature matching issue is not moving forward, because I think that out of all of them was the strongest claim, particularly with the mail-in ballots and the entire way that Maricopa County ran their election. And so, as you've described, it is very important for people to realize this is an uphill battle. Not only does Kari Lake have the burden of proof as the petitioner, and that's just always true in terms of the petitioner, but she's going to have to prove intent. And she's going to have to prove not just that they were reckless or that the machines suddenly malfunctioned, but that this was something specific, that Maricopa County election officials intentionally damaged the machines or caused them to malfunction or knew they would malfunction and intentionally did not fix them and allowed this to happen with foreknowledge. That's going to be very difficult. So what do you think is the likelihood of success on the merits of the case? And I think it's really going to depend on the strength of the witnesses, and also the fact that Katie Hobbs has now filed a motion to quash the subpoena. She doesn't want to testify. So
likelihood of success, it's not my area of expertise. I pick the brains of people who I know are smarter than me. And, just to go back to one issue, like Robert Barnes always says, or frequently says during our streams, the joke is it's not ripe by spring, no standing by winter, and then rotten or latches by fall. It's either not ripe enough yet, or you have no standing when it's ripe. And then if you have standing, but it's past, it's latches. And just so everybody really appreciates this, the judge, at least on the requirement of the ballots on demand, the third condition that Kari Lake has to prove is that it did in fact impact the results. Try to reconcile that idea with latches for not having sued before the first midterm vote had been cast. It's impossible to reconcile. I don't know what the likelihood of success is. If it's going to be like the 2020, it'll be 0% chance, but we're going to go through a trial that's been set up deliberately in a way that you could never have succeeded. Because like you say, I don't know if deliberate or willful negligence, reckless disregard, if that qualifies as sufficiently intentional. You got to prove the intent. I mean, there will be some videos or some evidence of Bill Gates, the Maricopa County, I don't forget what his title is, but the guy who put out the video on election day saying, we have problems with tabulators at 20% of the locations, and apparently it's more than that. He had vehemently opposed MAGA Republicans in the past. He was part of a political action committee, from what I understand, that fought against MAGA Republicans. So you're going to put all things together, but at the end of the day, the judge is going to say, okay, I believe it happened, but it wasn't deliberate. Or it happened and it was deliberate, but it wasn't done specifically for the purposes of impacting the election. Or it was deliberate, was done for the purposes of impacting the election, but I don't know that I have concrete evidence that it did, in fact, taint 17,000 ballots, I think is the difference. It's been sort of set up to fail to some extent, but at the very least, she's going to have her 2 days in court starting tomorrow.
Yes. And what I think is really important about this conversation, and I really appreciate your breakdown of that, David, is that people need to go into this not listening to the mainstream media that, of course, is only focusing on the fact that 8 of the counts were dismissed. And so the phrasing, of course, from the mainstream media was that Kari Lake's petition was mostly dismissed. Of course, they're only focusing on that. They're trying to just dismiss this outright and say, this isn't even worth paying attention to. This isn't even moving forward. And Kari Lake's team, of course, is focusing on the fact that they do get 2 days at trial. They do get to have a hearing on the merits. That is significant simply for the fact that this is, in at least modern history of the last 2 elections, the first time we have actually had a hearing on the merits and presenting testimony. She has whistleblowers that are coming forward. They may speak to that intent piece, but I also want listeners to be realistic about the outcome. This isn't just now that she gets a trial, this is a slam dunk. And of course she's going to prove this. And there is a smoking gun because we have a memo from Bill Gates that says, I intend to make sure that the machines don't work. I mean, something like that would clearly show intent and then clearly show that it was more than the margin of victory, those 17,000 ballots, probably does not exist. I haven't heard that exists. So she's going to have to prove that indirectly. And that, of course, can happen at trial. And that's where you don't have to have a statement of intent. You can prove that through circumstantial evidence, through the totality of the circumstances, through other witnesses, through the whistleblowers, through all of the evidence. And hopefully the judge is not setting her up to fail. But I do want people to have a realistic expectation that this is not going to just be the slam dunk that absolutely changes everything across the country for election integrity.
No, I mean, even if she had succeeded on the better part or all of her claims, it's a massive uphill battle to begin with, if only for the reason that the judge elaborated in the decision, that the vote's in theory, you presume the legitimacy, not the invalidity. And so anything to overturn it or to call a new one, in theory, could be seen as undermining the will of the people who have already spoken. Part of my problem with the decision, where I forget which header the judge dismissed on the basis that the people have spoken. It's like, well, if the people have spoken, but the vote was tainted, they actually, some of them might have spoken, but not been listened to or not been heard. But it's an uphill battle one way or the other. 2 of the 10 claims, okay, it's not all of them. Some of them I could understand the dismissal of. But the other one that I absolutely cannot understand the rationale for the dismissal of is the interfering on social media. Like, the judge is saying, well, it's alleged that Katie Hobbs was, flagging content on Twitter to have it taken down, have accounts suppressed several months ago. And we now know a lot more of how that has gone down, both in 2020 and, up until the current date. And the judge says, look, it wasn't her doing it. She was just flagging certain content, and Twitter, private actor, was doing it on its own. Bull plop on the face of it, because now we know how Twitter's been doing it. But the judge said, even if she had done it, it wouldn't be electoral misconduct under Arizona law, because it was done months earlier and not in the context of canvassing. I mean, weaseling out of that particular header, which I think is determinate, using social media and the power the government has to strong arm, induce, or coerce private entities like Twitter that have FBI agents still working for them to do their bidding for them, and then say, well, it's a private actor, so it's not state action. That really is weaseling out of a very hard question that the courts have to answer sooner than later.
They do. And everyone, I think, who is concerned about election integrity is wondering, why is the judiciary and all of these judges, why are they so hesitant to deal with the facts and deal with the situation on the merits? And if we're talking about disenfranchising voters and saying, well, perhaps the appropriate remedy is to redo the election. And then people could say, all right, well, what if you were able to vote on November 8th, but now you're not able to get out and vote in another election? Is that some kind of suppression? Those types of things. But what ultimately is fair when you have disenfranchisement of voters who were not able to vote or whose vote was diluted based on the counting potentially of illegal ballots, like the signature verification issue and some of these other things? And so whenever there is damage like that, then you have to calculate what is fundamentally fair to the voters. And even if you're wanting to suggest the voters spoke, well, if they spoke, but some of those voices were illegal, or some of those voices didn't actually speak because they were suppressed on election day, then we can't say that the voters collectively spoke in a way that is meaningful according to state law and that is lawful and correct according to state law. So in terms of the remedy, what do you think is likely? Let's just say that Kari Lake proves her claim on even one of the issues, and she does prove intent, and she shows that it did ultimately rise to impacting ballots over and above the margin of victory. Is this something that is even possible under Arizona law, that they can call for a new election? I think it's possible. And if the judge on that issue says no, then the state legislature really has to deal with this.
Knowing the limits of my own knowledge and expertise, I wouldn't venture my own personal opinion. Robert Barnes and I have discussed it at length during our Sunday streams. The precedent is there to call a new election, to have something akin to a runoff. I would not be a fan. Hypothetically, she proves both claims, and granted, I would still be as reluctant to have the judge declare Kari Lake the winner, because people will rightly be up in arms. Have a runoff. They just had one in Georgia under different circumstances. Runoffs are not the end of the world. We're talking about 1.27 million votes versus 1.287 million votes, where by Bill Gates' own day of admission, there were such long lineups at certain precincts that people were invited to go elsewhere. I could imagine easily 17,000 just went home. Kids, dogs, work, whatever. So it would be nice to see something come of this. If I'm betting, I would bet that it gets dismissed, especially if it's 1-for-1. If someone gives me odds, maybe I'll bet that it gets granted. But the right just remedy would be hold a runoff type re-election and let everyone prepare and let it work fairly for everybody or unfairly for everybody. But day of lineup problems, ballot problems, day of disenfranchisement, it was 3-1 Republicans voting on election day versus mail-in. That didn't punish everyone equally, quite clearly.
Right. And I think that is a very important point to emphasize, that I agree with you. I would be just as uncomfortable with the judge declaring Kari Lake the winner as well, because if you accept the premise and the hypothetical that she proves her claim that the election was irretrievably compromised or broken, and there were these types of disenfranchisement, then the proper remedy would not to just be to declare her the victor, but to say we do need to have a runoff type of circumstance or a special election, which happens if in a variety of circumstances, if someone leaves office for a reason, death, other types of things mid-term, then we have had it regularly in the course of state history as well as federal elections, having a special election or a runoff. This isn't something that is completely beyond the scope of precedent, and certainly not in Arizona. But what I really think should happen in terms of election challenges overall, not only should the judiciary grow a spine and a backbone, and they should take the words of the minority of the Supreme Court in mooting out some of the post-2020 election challenges and say, why are we keeping election law and election administration kind of under this shroud of mystery? We need to have very clear precedent. And the state legislatures need to take up that battle and very clearly outline what qualifies in terms of claims. They need to allow for the data from the county supervisors and the election administrators to be given to both sides, to all candidates involved immediately, so that they can review that and determine, will these challenges be survivable and will they move forward? They need to have that data. And then the state legislature needs to provide an expedited process. And that is not a partisan comment. That should be something that all sides can agree to. But the fact that it's just the Democrats who would like to say that election challenges are somehow, quote unquote, overturning the results and disenfranchisement, unless it comes to their own candidates, shows partisan sportsmanship and really bad tactics of third world countries at worst. And so from a standpoint of just how this factors into a precedent and what we can encourage state legislatures to do, regardless of the outcome in Kari Lake's specific situation, how do you think that this will impact the conversation and the policy making surrounding election integrity moving forward?
I don't know that having limited the claim to 2 of the 10 headers, you're not going to have evidence of what might be very offensive election interference or election influence on social media. You're not going to have a number of the other claims be brought to evidence. But what's going to happen after this? Probably nothing. It's the way things are working, but maybe something if enough people on both sides say there's no reason why there should not be automatic audits after any election when it's sufficiently close. The idea that you could have a 17,000 vote difference on 1.2 million votes and not have something of an audit to ensure that mistakes do happen, totally human. I don't automatic audits when there's a margin sufficiently thin would be good. I mean, I don't know how that's going to have to be done at a state or federal level. And other than that, election contest lawsuits should not be treated like an attack on democracy. They should be regarded as the defense of democracy, because that's what they are. But we've January 6th committee has spoken now. The idea of questioning elections as though it hadn't been done for the last 100 years, especially by mainstream media in the last 10 years, that it's become an attack on democracy and not the defense of democracy is pure partisan politics. And even in Kari Lake's case, the previous case that she had, which challenged the previous lawsuit, which was just dismissed, and the lawyers were sanctioned due to the alleged frivolity on the basis of a motion to dismiss. They're weaponizing one's constitutional right to challenge the constitutionality of elections. That's not defending democracy. That is actually attacking it.
Yes, so well said. And we have to, as conservatives, change that narrative, stand up to the mainstream media's BS and say, no, this is protecting democracy. It's defending democracy, defending our constitutionally protected right to vote. And as we, the people, select and prefer our leaders so that they are not just installed outside of the state law, and the administration of the elections is transparent, it's audited, and everyone knows that our elections in America are still free and fair. That should just be a fundamental principle that we can all agree with. And so I applaud Kari Lake for bringing this forward, for not backing down. She's had intense attacks from the leftist media and saying that she's doing this for all other kinds of reasons. But for her to bring these election challenges, for her attorneys to bring them, and to say we are still going to defend the sanctity of the ballot, I applaud her for that. I hope that the trial goes well, and I hope that above what we're a little concerned about in terms of the uphill battle that she has, I am praying for success here. And at the very, very least, regardless of the outcome, this can strengthen the conversation around election integrity, because I think people in America are now woken up to this issue, and that it is an issue where Democrats, since the 2000 election with Bush versus Gore, they have been slowly strategizing and moving the ball forward in terms of how they are able to administer elections in a way that benefits them, where Republicans have not been nearly as strategic, especially when it comes to lawfare. So, David, thank you so much for your commentary today. Closing thoughts, and where can people find you?
Closing thoughts. Hold on, I hadn't thought about that. Where can people find me? Rumble, Viva Frei, Twitter, the Viva Frei, because Viva Frei was already taken. Closing thoughts. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And bottom line, elections, paper, pencil votes, day of only. In as much as I love what Elon Musk is doing on Twitter, elections of candidates, elections of presidents is not supposed to be as easy as a Twitter app where undue influence can be exerted totally anonymously with nobody knowing whether or not that was a free vote, a free of conscience vote. Paper, day of, except for certain exceptions, which should be rare and limited. And that will ensure that democracy prevails and not manipulation of rules that are opaque and oftentimes unknown and untested because they never get to court.
Well said. Well said. Well, thank you, my friend. And for everyone listening, subscribe wherever you stream to the Jenna Ellis Show. We will be following the trial over the next couple of days and, of course, bring you commentary right here on the Jenna Ellis Show. And I know that Viva as well on his stream, which I subscribe to. I'm a listener of his show. You should listen to his commentary with Robert Barnes. They're excellent attorneys, have great analysis on all kinds of issues. I'll be listening to his commentary there as well. And thank you, my friend, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you very much. Same to you.
Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. My Pillow is excited to announce the original My Slippers are back in stock just in time for the holidays. Last Christmas, you made our slippers the #1 selling My Pillow product, and now they have added smaller sizes, larger sizes, wide sizes, and new colors. What makes my slippers different is the exclusive 4-layer design that you're not going to find in any other slippers. My slippers' patented layers make them ultra comfortable, extremely durable, and they help relieve the stress on your feet from all the running around this holiday season. Wear them anytime, anywhere, and save $90 off with promo code Jenna. That's only $49.98 per pair when you use promo code Jenna. That's JENNA. You'll absolutely love my slippers. I love them too. In fact, I wear them all the time when I'm recording my podcast, and I love the fact that they are indoor, outdoor wear. So I can go from inside recording my podcast, sipping my coffee, to walking outside to get the mail. So you will absolutely love my slippers. And now they are also extending their 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2023, making them the best Christmas gifts ever. So go to mypillow.com and use promo code JENNA, or call 1-800-564-8475 and use promo code Jenna to save $90 off the original My Slippers. So that's only $49.98 a pair. Quantities will not last, so go and order now. Support Mike Lindell and support the Salem Podcast Network.